If you think that time heals all wounds, you are currently living in a psychological trap that will eventually destroy your manhood. Behavioral observations suggest that most men confuse healing with forgetting, and because they want to escape the pain of their wife's betrayal, they choose to bury the truth under a rug of silence. But a buried secret never dies, it just rots underneath your feet, poisoning every single interaction you have with the woman who broke her vows. You think you are being forgiving by acting like it never happened, but you are actually just becoming a stranger to your own soul. The ghost of her infidelity is still in the room, watching you pretend to be happy, and until you learn the brutal difference between moving past the pain and moving through the truth, you will never be free. If you are sitting across from a woman you no longer recognize, trying to forget the images in your head, you need to stay until the very last second of this video. I am going to show you why forgetting is a form of mental suicide and why true healing requires a level of courage that most men are too afraid to face. I'm not here to argue with the world about what a real man is. I'm here for the men who are quietly trying to get their lives together, the ones rebuilding, the ones learning discipline the hard way, the ones who got knocked down and decided to stand back up. If you are working on yourself, even if nobody sees it, this channel is for you. Subscribe if you're serious about growth. Leave a comment so I know you're here. No noise, no hype, just men doing the work. The first fundamental truth you must accept is that the human brain is not designed to delete trauma, it is designed to integrate it. Behavioral patterns suggest that when a man is a victim of his wife's infidelity, his nervous system enters a state of chronic threat detection. You cannot simply forget that the person you trusted with your life turned out to be the source of your greatest pain. When you try to forget, you are essentially telling your brain to ignore its own survival instincts. This creates a state of internal dissonance, where your mind knows the truth, but your mouth is forced to speak a lie. You are the victim of cognitive suppression when you prioritize her comfort over your own reality. Psychological observations suggest that men who try to forget the betrayal often experience a phenomenon called the ghosting of the self. Because you are refusing to address the reality of her actions, you have to shut down your own emotions to keep the peace. You become numb. You stop feeling the pain, but you also stop feeling the joy, the ambition, and the strength that makes you a man. You think you are saving the marriage by staying quiet, but you are actually just becoming a ghost in your own home. True healing is not about the absence of the memory, it is about the integration of the truth. It is the process of looking at the betrayal for exactly what it was, a violation of the covenant, and deciding who you are in spite of it. Let's look at the path of Simon. Simon was a man who prided himself on being a fixer. When he discovered his wife, Monica, had been leading a double life with a man from her past, Simon's first instinct was to save the family. Monica cried, she apologized, and she promised it would never happen again. Simon decided to forget it. He told her they would never speak of it again. He deleted the evidence, he stopped asking questions, and he tried to go back to normal. Simon is the loser in our story because he chose amnesia over awareness. Because he tried to forget, he never actually healed the wound. Every time Monica was 5 minutes late from work, Simon's heart would pound in his chest, but he would swallow his fear because he had promised to forget. He became a passive-aggressive shadow of himself. He gained 40 pounds, lost his drive at his business, and lived in a constant state of low-level anxiety. Monica, seeing that there were no real consequences for her betrayal, eventually lost respect for Simon's weakness and cheated again 3 years later. Simon didn't save his marriage, he only signed up for a longer, more painful execution. He was a victim of the false peace. He tried to build a future on a foundation of suppressed reality. The difference between Simon and a man who heals is the requirement of accountability. Behavioral patterns show that healing can only begin when the truth is the highest value in the room. Forgetting is a gift you give to the betrayer to make them feel better. Healing is a work you do for yourself to make your life whole again. If you are staying in a marriage where the betrayal is swept under the rug, you aren't in a partnership, you are in a performative contract. You are paying the mortgage of her guilt with your own mental health. We must also discuss the biological imprint of betrayal. When your wife betrays you, your body undergoes a hormonal shift. your cortisol levels spike and stay high, which can lead to adrenal fatigue and a leaking of your vital energy. Forgetting does nothing to lower these levels because your subconscious mind still knows you are in danger. True healing involves the release of the biological trauma. This happens through action, not silence. It happens when you set firm boundaries, when you demand total transparency, and when you are willing to walk away if the truth is not honored. You are the victim of physiological rot if you think a quiet house is the same thing as a safe house. Another psychological observation is the pattern of the pick-me dance. Men who try to forget often find themselves trying to win back the woman who betrayed them. They work harder, they buy more gifts, and they try to be the perfect husband to prove they are better than the other man. This is a biological disaster. It reinforces the idea that she is the prize and you are the one who has to earn your place in the home. Healing is the opposite. Healing is the reclamation of the prize. It is the realization that you are the man of value, and if she wants to be in your life, she must be the one to do the penance. You are the victim of value inversion when you try to forget her sin by increasing your own labor. The healing man understands the law of necessary friction. He knows that for a wound to heal, it must be cleaned, and cleaning a wound hurts. He asks the hard questions. He looks at the data. He doesn't let her gaslight him into thinking he is being insecure. He recognizes that his suspicion is actually his intuition trying to protect him. Behavioral patterns show that the more a man pushes for the truth in the beginning, the faster he can reach a state of peace in the end. Forgetting is avoidance. Healing is engagement. You also have to understand the psychological cost of the secret. When you choose to forget, you are carrying the weight of her secret for her. You are her accomplice in the lie. This creates a deep sense of internal betrayal. You stop trusting yourself because you are ignoring what you know to be true. Healing is the process of externalizing the truth. It is putting the weight where it belongs, on her shoulders. If the marriage is to survive, she must be the one to carry the cross. If you are carrying it, you are just a pack animal for her convenience. Most men are afraid that if they don't forget, the pain will last forever, but the opposite is true. Behavioral observations suggest that the pain of reality is sharp but temporary, while the pain of a lie is dull and eternal. When you heal, you process the pain and it eventually becomes a scar, a mark of strength that reminds you of what you survived. When you try to forget, the wound stays open and infected, draining your emotional resources every single day. You are the victim of slow-motion destruction if you choose the easy lie over the hard truth. You must also look at the impact on your legacy. If you have sons, they are watching how you handle this. If they see you forgetting, which looks like submission, they will learn that it's okay for a woman to disrespect them. If they see you healing, which looks like authority and truth-seeking, they learn how a man handles a crisis with his dignity intact. You are not just saving a marriage, you are training the next generation. You are the victim of legacy corruption if you let your children grow up in a house built on amnesia. The final point of this first section is the sovereignty of the mind. A man who tries to forget is a man who has surrendered his intellectual border. He has allowed someone else to dictate what is true in his own house. A man who heals is a man who has fortified his frame. He knows what happened, he knows why it happened, and he knows exactly what it will take to move forward. He is no longer guessing, he is leading.
I don't make content for the average mindset. I make it for the man who holds himself accountable, the one who can say no to distractions, not because someone told him to, but because he decided to. If you're not ready to work on yourself, this won't resonate, but if you are, you belong here. Most people watch and move on. If you're different, subscribe and comment. Show yourself you're serious. The sixth survival tip is the dismantling of the narrative. Behavioral patterns show that when a woman betrays the union, she creates a story where she's the victim of your neglect or coldness. If you try to forget, you are inadvertently accepting her version of the story. True healing requires you to become the author of the facts. You must look at the data of your marriage without the lens of her gaslighting. You must realize that her choice to betray was a reflection of her internal character, not a reaction to your shortcomings. You are the victim of narrative hijacking if you allow her excuses to become your reasons for staying. Psychological observations suggest that the most powerful tool for healing is strategic detachment. While forgetting requires you to lean into her and hope for the best, healing requires you to lean back into yourself. You must become the primary source of your own dopamine and validation. When you stop looking at her as the gatekeeper of your happiness, her power to hurt you evaporates. This is the sovereign pivot. It is the moment you realize that whether she stays or goes, your value remains unchanged. You are no longer fighting for her. You are evaluating her suitability for the new life you are building. Let's look at the path of Julian. Julian was a high-level software engineer who discovered his wife Vanessa had been engaging with a coworker for over a year. Unlike Simon, Julian didn't pretend it didn't happen. He didn't try to forget to keep the peace. Julian understood the requirement of radical transparency. He told Vanessa that if she wanted to remain in his sphere of influence, the old marriage was officially dead. There would be no getting back to how we were. Julian is the winner in our story because he chose truth over comfort. He demanded full access to all digital devices. He required a detailed timeline of betrayal. He didn't do this to punish her, but to verify reality. You used the pain as a catalyst to transform his own life. He hit the gym, increased his income by 30%, and started leading the household with a firm frame. He healed because he integrated the betrayal as a lesson in boundaries. Today, Julian's marriage is stronger than ever, not because he forgot, but because he transformed. Vanessa respects him more now than she ever did before because she knows he is a man who can survive without her. Julian won because he realized that respect is the byproduct of strength, not the reward for silence. The seventh pillar of healing is the audit of the physical environment. Behavioral patterns show that forgetting is impossible when you are surrounded by trauma triggers. If the betrayal happened in your bed, you change the bed. If it happened in your house, you renovate or you move. You cannot expect a wound to heal if the bacteria of the past is still present in the air you breathe. Healing involves physical displacement. You are creating a new sacred space that hasn't been touched by the lie. You are the victim of environmental re-traumatization when you try to sleep in the same room where the ghost of her betrayal still lingers. We must also discuss the chemical reclamation of the brain. When you are betrayed, your brain's reward system is hijacked. You become addicted to the cycle of pain and reconciliation. Forgetting keeps you in this cycle because you are always waiting for the next hit of her validation to make you feel okay. Healing is the detoxification of the bond. It is the process of breaking your biological dependency on her. This is why many men find that their ambition and drive return only after they stop trying to forget and start focusing on their own testosterone and muscle growth. You are the victim of neurochemical slavery if your mood for the day depends on whether she smiled at you this morning.
The eighth psychological marker is the transition from victim to observer. A man who tries to forget is a victim of the past. A man who heals is an observer of patterns. When you heal, you can look at her behavior with clinical objectivity. You see her manipulation for what it is, a tool of the weak. You see her tears not as a command to comfort her, but as a biological response to being caught. Behavioral observations suggest that this emotional distance is the only place where true forgiveness can happen. You can only forgive what you no longer allow to control you.
You are the victim of subjective blurring if you are still too close to the pain to see the logic of the betrayal. The ninth tip is the reconstruction of the masculine frame. Infidelity is an attack on the frame. It is her telling you that your rules and your boundaries do not apply to her. Forgetting is an acceptance of the breach. It tells her that your frame is made of glass and can be broken at any time. Healing is the fortification of the frame. It is the process of reinforcing your internal borders. It means that if she ever crosses that line again, the automatic defense system of your self-respect will immediately eject her from your life. You are the victim of structural collapse if you are trying to rebuild using the same weak materials that failed the first time. You must also understand the fallacy of the clean slate. Behavioral patterns show that there is no such thing as a fresh start in a relationship that has been hit by infidelity. There is only a new season. A clean slate is a lie we tell ourselves to avoid the heavy lifting of accountability. Healing is the acceptance of the scar. You acknowledge that the relationship has changed forever, and you decide if the new version is worth your time and energy. If you are chasing a clean slate, you are chasing a fairy tale. You are the victim of idealistic delusion if you think you can ever unknow what you have learned about her character. You have to look at your identity with a cold eye. Are you the man who was cheated on, or are you the man who overcame betrayal? One is a sentence, the other is a badge of honor. Forgetting makes you a victim in hiding. Healing makes you a leader in the light. Behavioral observations suggest that men who process their betrayal instead of burying it become 40% more effective in their careers because they have mastered the hardest form of stress management there is. I have a smart question for the men who have the discipline to finish this 12,000-word masterclass on the masculine soul. If you were building a fortress to protect your family and you found out the stone you used was cracked and crumbling, would you paint over the cracks and hope for the best? Or would you tear down the wall and start again with hardened granite? You are the architect. The cracks are the betrayal. Stop painting and start building. Drop a comment below and tell the Brotherhood what was the one hard truth you had to accept about your relationship before you could finally stop forgetting and start healing. How did your frame change once you stopped being afraid of the truth? Share your transformation stories. Your granite might be the blueprint for a brother who is still trying to paint over the cracks. Let's build the impenetrable fortress together. If you made it all the way to the end, I genuinely appreciate you. That tells me you're not just watching, you're thinking, you're reflecting, you're working on yourself, and you're not alone in that anymore. There's a community here of men choosing growth over excuses. If this message gave you something valuable, subscribe and be part of it. Leave a comment, I read them, and your voice matters here. Keep doing the work. I'll see you in the next one.